Hello everyone and welcome to Tournament War Room. My name is Boulevard and this is where I'll be going over the tournament weekend, keep you up to date on what you had missed in case you didn't get a chance to check out all the sweet Legends of Runeterra tournament action. So we only had the one tournament to look at. It was the Online League Series number 25. This one had 88 players because the Europeans are for the most part grinding out for EU Masters. They weren't really playing in tournaments last weekend. They're not really going to play in tournaments this upcoming weekend, and then when the cutoff actually happens for EU Masters, then they can go and explore and play tournaments again. So unfortunate that with Crossshard going away, they didn't really get to explore the tournament scene in the first 2 weeks of the format, but it is what it is. So we're going to talk about the lack of TLC and the lack of Aurelia. There's a couple of reasons that this could have happened. Neither of them are particularly interesting. I didn't go through the lists to see, I didn't go like person by person to see if, what the representation of Aurelia and TLC in the tournament were versus how many topped, but I will tell you that for the most part, we probably looked at about 20 or 30 of the deck lists over the course of the day while we were looking for players to cast. I only probably saw about 2 Aurelia decks. So the Aurelia was definitely players just not bringing it this weekend, and it could be a lot of reasons. They didn't have a lineup that they felt it complemented. They thought there would be too many counters to it because it is one of the more popular decks on ladder right now. They felt it was too easy to counter, maybe an exploitable weakness in the lineup rather than that hedge third deck that gives you, the ability to leave your TLC open because they felt like that had been Aurelia. And TLC could have fallen off for a couple of reasons. Number one being people recognize that it's a kind of a boring deck. It didn't get nerfed when the set released. It's probably not going to get nerfed before the seasonal unless it puts up some massive numbers again. And ultimately, if you're going to have to play this deck for a while, yeah, maybe you put it down for the opening weekend and experiment with some other things. It could also be we were expecting a high presence of Aurelia TLC lineups, and we didn't want to have to commit ourselves to banning the Aurelia every time just because the TLC was in our lineup. We also did see a number of TLC countermeasure lineups do fairly well in the seasonal, so, it is weird. I will say that for sure, that nobody brought TLC into the top 8, but it's not the most unreasonable thing in the world, and I don't think this is a trend that is going to continue. I think TLC will start to pop up again as players start to figure out whether or not Aurelia is actually a tournament-ready deck, which, based on what we saw last weekend, it seems like players really aren't feeling it right now. Now, as far as the things that did top, of course, there was a high presence of Nasus, and the 1 zillion Nasus that was up here was actually because there was a Thresh Acel in that player's lineup, so probably would have brought Thresh Nasus if they could, but the lineup consideration that What Am I made just made it so that he brought the zillion Nasus instead, and there were some good things and some bad things about that deck. Ultimately, after watching him play a couple games on it, I think that Thresh Nasus is still just the way to go. A high presence of Acel Demacia, to the surprise of nobody. This is another very safe choice left over from the seasonal format that does very well into just about everything, and especially the Nasus matchup. So after we get out of that, Overwhelm did pretty well because it does good against Nasus. Players brought it because they were expecting Aurelia, and Ruben Pile just sort of picking up a lot of steam lately. I think that it's one of the more fun Targon decks that you can play right now, and Mountain Scryer decks are a little bit lost at the moment, as we did see an Atrocity nerf. They weren't doing amazing before that, and I think players still just wanted to maybe run double Targon, maybe have just a Targon lineup in there, but didn't want to play Acel Demacia. There's a couple of different reasons, but I think that the Ruben Pile is pretty cool. I don't expect it to get more than 3 in a top cut. I think it's a very solid deck, but I think it's one of those things that we're going to consistently see as like 1 or so of in a top cut. And that's about it. Not a lot of aggro, actually. It turns out that based on the data from ladder, Aurelia has a very high play rate and a very low win rate comparative to other week 1 aggro decks, so we'll kind of have to see how that one actually shakes out. But for the moment, looks like she's not ready for tournaments. TLC didn't show up this week. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen again. And Nasus is still the top dog, despite taking a couple of nerfs. And that is what you missed in case you had a busy weekend, didn't get a chance to check out any Legends of Runeterra tournament action. And that is it for this week of Tournament War Room. I'll be back on Friday with a Tournament Tactician, getting you ready for that J and Bay $1,000 Mastering Runeterra tournament if you decide to play in that one. If you're European, good luck on your ladder climb. Maybe you have enough LP, you want to enter this 1K. Who knows? I'm not going to be casting it this time around, but I wish everybody the best of luck. So, my name is Boulevard. As always, good luck in your tournaments.